Okay, so it's time for us to back up a little bit and fill in a few voids. We kind of barreled through some stuff. I introduced you to some programming concepts, but I left out a lot of little details. Simple things like math, for example. How do we actually use math in computer science? And we'll get into some stuff manipulating strings briefly. And then I'm going to give you some homework. So this will be the first time you have sort of written textbook homework that you'll have to deal with at the end of this particular module. So that being said, I don't want to waste a lot of time having you guys type. So I'm going to be posting more and more code. And in this case, you're just going to copy and paste it into a window. And just follow along with me. Make sure you understand it. Play with a couple of the variables and numbers and make sure everything makes sense. All right? Because there will be homework associated with it. So that being said, I'm now on the Canvas page, and I'm in the ARG I'm So Lost section here above the modules. And click on Code Examples. And right now we're on Module 5. And by the way, for those of you who are not using Canvas, these will be posted on the my own Patton Robotics website. So click on Module 5. And by the time this video is, you guys do it, there'll be a couple of code examples here. Right now I only have one, but there will be at least two others here. So I want you to find the one that's on the Introduction to Simple Math, which should be the first one. And just go ahead and copy it all. And then once you've got it all copied, you'll be able to paste it into a new sketch. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this. And lo and behold, here's my sketch. I guess I could actually do it. I'll go Control A, Control V, and I've just put back in exactly what I just copied. So let's go over a little bit of the base of what I've given you. First off, I have some header information in here. Notice I did this same thing from our last code. I want to see every time that I recompile. So that it shows up here on the display that, oh, I reloaded this thing, so I'm not stuck looking at some section of the loop. Now this is super important. In this particular case, I don't want to sit there and watch it do some monotonous math thing over and over again. I want it to run only once. Okay? And to do that, what I've done is I've created I've put in my main loop. I've put a for loop at the very end, okay? And notice it's just for with two semicolons in it. Well, basically what I've done here is I've created an infinite loop that goes from nowhere to, from nothing to nowhere, all right? So this loop, as soon as it enters it, it's just going to get stuck. It's not going to go any further. It's going to be stuck in a loop forever because it doesn't know what the heck to do, all right? So it just burns up time. So as it runs the first example, it'll get to this, and it just plain stops until I reload the entire system. Okay, so it's a great way to make it stop running. There's other ways to do it, by the way, and I'll introduce them as we come along. But since the only looping mechanism we've dealt with is for, we're going to start with that one. So let's look at example 1. Okay, you should have this up and loaded. Maybe we want to save it. I called it ramp up 1 because we're going to have a couple of these ramp up fill in void things. Example 1 is super simple here. So all I want to be able to do is do very basic math. Notice there's only one variable that's created. It's an integer variable. It's answer. And then I'm going to simply display the answer. So if I load this, what should happen is we'll get that loop at the beginning there. I'm sorry, not that loop. We'll get that reboot at the beginning. And then it types out the answer is 7. Well, that's because 3 plus 4 is 7. I can, there's probably no real surprise here. If I make that 4 plus 4, it's going to load up and the answer is going to be 8. Okay, it's going to reboot and the answer is 8. So, that's addition. Really simple. Let's look at example 2. So in example 2, I've upped it up just a little bit because I'm also going to introduce the idea of echoing the variable. So now I've created two new variables, x and y, and I've given them the value of 3 and 4. And what I've done here is I've taken the answer variable and I've simply made it plus x and y instead. So it's going to be functionally the very same. But what I've done is I've echoed the variable. See what I've done here? I've typed in example 2. First thing it's going to do is print the value of x, which this time is 3, and then it's going to print within quotes the plus, then it's going to print the value of y, okay, then equal, and then, of course, the value of answer. So if I load up example 2, it gives us a really nice complete, oh, what the heck? No, I did okay. For some reason my computer glitched, but we're good. So 3 plus 4 is equal to 7, all right? And once again, if I change this, you know, I can change this, and it's going to change the entire output. This is called echoing the variable. I'm going to be expecting you guys to echo the variable more and more. So on your printed output, when we come to it, I don't want to just see an answer. I want to see the entire explanation. I should understand just from this what happened. And I built it into this. So let me bring that back to the 4. Let's go ahead now to example 3. So let me comment this out and uncomment example 3. We'll scroll down to example 3. In this case, I've taken and just demonstrating subtraction. Okay, I hope this comes as no surprise. I've still got everything the same. I've got my 2 integer variables. I've assigned the values of 3 and 4. And I'm going to go ahead and make them subtract. And 3 minus 4 is, in fact, -1. Okay? So we see it all spelled out beautiful, echoing those variables. All right? I stress it over and over again. Let's go to the next one, which is multiplication. So I think you guys are getting a pretty good handle. You should be able to predict this. If we go down to multiplication, I'm going to have 3 and 4, and I'm going to multiply. So that's the star symbol here. Okay. Oh, and this is actually really common. A lot of times students do this because they do this a lot in math. All right. If I do this, it's going to error. It doesn't understand. You actually have to explicitly tell it that I want to multiply. You can't just put the 2 variables next to each other and assume that multiplication is going to happen. So I have now done that. I am explicitly telling it to multiply, and I've got my echoed variables, and what I should get is 3 times 4 is equal to 12. Okay, sweet. So this is going really nice and smooth. Let's go down to example 5. All right, and example 5. So let's just do division, okay? So I'm going to start with a 3 in here, and I think you guys know 3 divided by 4. We should be able to get a nice answer, and we get, we get 0. Well, what the heck happened? 3 divided by 4 is not 0. All right, so did my compiler error? Did something go wrong? Let's put in a value. These are my samples here to remind me. Let's put in a value of 12 because we know that should work, right? So 12 divided by 4 should give us a nice answer. And in fact, it's working perfectly. But it did not work with 3. So let's try something a little different. Let's try 13, because 13, of course, should give us a different answer. And I'm not sure why I'm getting this occasional error here, but it seemed to have worked. 13 divided by 4 is equal to 3. Well, that doesn't seem right. 13 divided by 4 should be 3.25. All right, let's try to get it. It seemed to have rounded it down to 3. So it appears as though it's rounding for some reason. Let's try putting a value in that's going to be much closer to, say, 4. So let's try, let's see, what's 15 divided by 4? 3.75. So we'll take 3.75. So let's put a 15 in here and load it up. And lo and behold, it's still 3. Well, it's not rounding very well. even if it had rounded, it should be a value greater than that. Okay, it should have rounded to 4, but it's rounding down. All right. So clearly we have a problem here. So how do we fix it? Well, it's really simple. We have to introduce another type of variable. Let's go to example 6. So in example 6, what I've done is I've created a float variable. All right. So a float is referencing the decimal. Okay. So in this particular case, I still have my two variables. I've called it x and I've called it y. But by having a float variable for both the input and the output, it's now telling the compiler that I'm expecting a decimal place. So if I run this, it's going to treat it as if it has a decimal, and it will account for it. So we're going to see in this particular case, 3.0 divided by 4.0 is equal to 0.75. So by working with the variables of float, I now have the capacity to work in fractional numbers. So now you have a new thing, float, your newest thing to consider. And keep in mind, anytime you do integer division, it's going to get screwed up. So if I do integer division like I did here with 3 divided by 4, all right, it's going to be 0. There's lots and lots of math problems that require you to deal with multiplying by a fraction, for example. And if you inadvertently just put in, for example, a 3 divided by 4, it's going to multiply your equation by 0, and you're going to get 0 for your final answer. So you cannot do that. If you want a decimal, you have to tell it explicitly that I am looking for a decimal, and I should treat my variables as decimals. All right? So hopefully this was useful, and I will see you again really, really soon.